The wind howled across the white land beyond the wall. Snow fell endlessly, and the trees stood like old ghosts, silent and watching. Ned Stark pulled his fur cloak tighter around him, though by now he was used to the cold. It had been 3 years since he crossed the wall and disappeared from the south forever. The man once known as Lord Eddard Stark, Warden of the North, had become something else. Something the South would never expect. He was now king of the free folk. It hadn't started that way. When he fled King's Landing after his arrest, he was supposed to be executed. But Varys had other plans. A secret escape in the night. A ship. A long journey to Eastwatch. And then, with the help of old friends from the Night's Watch, he crossed the wall disguised as a deserter. Everyone thought he was dead, even his children. He had no plans to live. He thought he would die. In the cold lands beyond, just a nameless exile. But something strange happened. The free folk took him in. At first, they hated him. To them, he was a kneeler, a man from the south, someone who served kings and laws. They didn't trust him, but he was quiet, strong, and he didn't lie. They respected that. He lived among them like any other man, hunted for food, slept in caves, fought wild animals, and when the White Walkers returned, Ned was the first to fight. He led raids to protect the villagers. He gave smart advice in council fires. Slowly, the free folk began to look at him differently. Then Mance Rayder died, killed by a White Walker ambush near the Frostfangs. The free folk were leaderless. Many fought to take power. Tribes turned on each other. And then someone said it. Let Ned Stark lead us. At first, he refused. He had never wanted to be a king, not even in Winterfell. But the free folk didn't need a ruler sitting on a throne. They needed a protector, someone who had already bled for them, someone who wasn't chasing glory, that made him different, that made them trust him. So, under the dark sky, with torches burning and war horns sounding, they named him king, not of the 7 kingdoms, not of castles and crowns, but of the free folk. A king who bowed to no one, a king of survival. Now, as he stood on the edge of a cliff, looking down at the valley filled with tents and fires, Ned thought of his children. He missed them every day. Jon, Robb Sansa, Arya Bran, even little Rickon. Were they safe? Did they think him a coward? Did they know he was alive? Tormund Johnsbane came up beside him, laughing like he always did. "Winter's getting angry," he said. "We need to move south before the dead do." Ned nodded. "The wall won't stop them." "Not this time. We'll go through the Night's Watch," Tormund asked. "No," Ned replied. "They'll never trust us. But there's another way." Tormund raised an eyebrow. "You mean through the Shadow Pass? That's suicide." "It's better than waiting to die," Ned said. "I've already done that once." Down below, the free folk packed their things. Children played near the fire. Old women told stories. Warriors sharpened weapons. All of them looked up to him now. A Stark, ruling a people he once thought of as enemies. But the true enemy was still out there, marching with ice in their veins and death in their eyes. Ned Stark had no crown, no throne, just a sword, a heavy heart, and a promise to protect these people, whatever the cost. And soon the South would hear whispers, whispers that the North had a new king. But he didn't live in castles. He lived beyond the wall. The Shadow Pass was cursed, they said. A narrow trail of ice and broken rock, hidden between frozen cliffs and black mountains. It hadn't been used in years, not because it was dangerous, but because it was haunted. Whispers told of free folk who entered and never came out. Some said the dead walked there before the long night even began. Others claimed giants had made it their graveyard. But Ned Stark didn't believe in stories anymore. He believed in what he saw. And what he saw was a tide of death moving south, slow but steady, sweeping across the land like cold fire. If they didn't move now, the free folk would be wiped out, just like the last hearth, just like Hardhome. He gathered the chiefs, warlords, and elders around the fire that night. They sat on the snow, faces lit with orange flame, steam rising from there. Mouths as they argued. "The pass is death," shouted Burra One-Eye, slamming his axe into the ground. "We stay and fight," yelled another. "Stay." Ned's voice was low but firm. "You'll fight the dead with sticks and stone axes. They don't bleed. They don't rest. They don't stop." The others fell quiet. Even Tormund stopped chewing his dried meat. Ned stood up. The firelight danced on his face. "We crossed the Shadow Pass. It'll be hard. Some of us won't make it. But if we stay, none of us will. I won't force you, but I'm going." He turned and walked away, leaving silence behind. That night, no one slept well. By dawn, over 10,000 people were preparing to march. Mothers held crying babies close. Old men packed what little food. They had warriors tied ropes around sleds. Wolves howled in the distance. The wind carried the stench of something far worse than snow death. Ned walked alone for a moment, deep in thought. The last time he had led a march this large, it was to war alongside Robert Baratheon. He remembered those days young, proud, full of hope. Back then, he thought he understood honor. But now, beyond the wall, honor meant something else. It meant protecting people no one else would. Even if it killed him, he still remembered Catelyn's voice, her soft words in the night, her anger, her warmth, her final goodbye when he left Winterfell for King's Landing. She never knew that was the last time. Would she have forgiven him for dying so far from her? As the march began, the first to lead were the scouts, fast and quiet, slipping through the snow-like shadows. Then came the warriors, guarding the people on all sides. Ned rode in the center, his sword ice strapped to his back, his eyes always watching. The trail narrowed as they reached the mountains. Huge black rocks jutted out of the earth like broken teeth. The sun disappeared and the wind grew stronger. Every step felt like a warning. The first day was hard. The second day was harder. Children cried from hunger. Wolves stalked the rear. One of the sleds fell off a cliff, killing 3. No one said anything. They just kept moving. On the third night, something strange happened. They camped in a hollow, between 2 cliffs. Fires were lit, but the cold never left. Ned was sitting with Tormund and a few of the elders when a sound echoed through the pass, low and rumbling, like a drum made of bones. "What in the name of the old gods was that?" muttered Tormund. Ned stood slowly. The sound came again, this time closer. "Wake the guards," he ordered. "Get everyone up, quietly." They moved like whispers, walking through the camp, shaking shoulders, covering mouths. Even the children seemed to understand something was wrong. The air had changed. It wasn't just cold, it was heavy, wrong. Then the scream came, a long, chilling scream that split the night. It came from the eastern edge of the camp. By the time Ned arrived, the ground was covered in blood. A man had been torn apart, his body still twitching, his eyes wide with terror. No enemy in sight. Tormund stepped beside Ned, breathing hard. No tracks. Nothing. This isn't no wolf. Ned looked around. The cliffs were high and narrow. Shadows twisted in the moonlight. He knew then they were being hunted. Not by the dead. Not yet, but something else was out there. Something older. They moved faster after that. Left the fires behind. Walked through the night. Every sound was a threat. Every silence worse. By the fifth day, they were halfway through. The pass was closing. The cliffs leaned like giants trying to crush them. But Ned kept going, leading from the front. He spoke little, but when he did, people listened. His presence alone gave them strength. On the sixth night, they found something unexpected. A massive gate, hidden between rocks, ancient, covered in runes that glowed faintly blue. The scouts had missed it before. Ned stood before it, hearts beating faster. "This isn't free folk work," said Tormund. "This is old magic." He was right. The gate opened slowly, without a touch. Cold wind rushed through, and behind it darkness, deep and endless. But it was the only way forward. Ned looked back at his people. Thousands of faces watching him. He took a breath, tightened his grip on ice, and stepped through the gate. The others followed, whatever lay ahead. There was no turning back now. The gate closed behind them with a deep, echoing thud like the sound of a giant heart stopping. Darkness swallowed everything. For a moment, Ned couldn't even hear the breathing of the people behind him. It felt like the world had ended, like they had stepped into a grave too large to climb out of. Then came the light, faint, bluish, dancing along the walls. Not firelight, not torches, but some kind of natural glow, flowing through thin veins in the black stone like frozen rivers. The deeper they walked into the mountain, the more the veins pulsed, like the mountain itself was alive. "What is this place?" Someone whispered. Ned didn't answer. He didn't know. Tormund walked beside him, his axe resting on his shoulder. "Feels like we're inside a beast's belly," he muttered. "If this is the better way south, I'm starting to miss the snow." The tunnel was wide enough for 2 wagons, but the air felt thin. People walked slower, as if something unseen was pressing down on them. Children stopped crying. Even the animals made no sound. They just followed, quiet and trembling. Hours passed. Time became strange in the dark. The path twisted downwards, deeper and deeper into the mountain's heart. And then, suddenly it opened. A massive cavern spread out before them, lit by glowing crystals hanging from the ceiling, like stars. The walls were carved with faces, thousands of them, not human, not entirely. Long skulls, slit eyes, sharp features, silent judges watching from the stone. Ned stepped forward, staring. "What in the bloody hells is this?" Tormund asked, his voice quieter now. "This isn't made by men," Ned said softly. "Not free folk, not first men. You think it's the children?" Tormund asked. Ned nodded, or something older. A strange silence filled the place. It wasn't peaceful, it was expectant, as if the cavern itself was waiting, watching. They made camp there, though no one really rested. Fires burned without warmth. Food tasted like ash. The air smelled faintly of iron and dust. That night, Ned dreamed. He was in Winterfell, standing in the godswood beneath the heart tree. Snow fell, soft and endless. His children stood before him: Jon, Robb, Arya, Bran, Sansa and Rickon. But they were older, changed. Faces he barely recognized. They didn't speak, just stared. Then the tree bled. Red sap poured from its eyes like tears. And a voice whispered not from the tree, but from beneath it. He watches you now. He remembers the broken promise. Ned woke with a gasp. His hand gripped ice without thinking. Sweat ran down his back despite the cold. Around him, others stirred restlessly. Some had cried out in their sleep. Others were murmuring things in languages long forgotten. Tormund sat beside him, sharpening his axe. He looked at Ned carefully. You dreamt too, he said. Ned didn't answer. They're getting worse, Tormund went on. The dreams. My boys say the walls whisper to them. Some see their dead kin. We won't stay long, Ned said, standing. We move at first light. But there was no light. The cavern never changed. No sun, no moon. No way to measure. Time, they moved forward anyway. The next tunnel was different. Narrower, carved. And this time, they didn't walk alone. At first, it was just a feeling eyes in the dark. Then, shadows that didn't move with the fire. Then, shapes. Not white walkers, not whites, but something else, once. Ned caught a full glimpse. It stood at the edge of the path tall, thin, wrapped in pale skin like stretched leather. Its face was long and twisted, with no mouth and black pits for eyes. It didn't move, just stared. When Ned turned to show the others, it was gone. The further they went, the more people saw them. Some started to whisper, others began to lose focus. One man walked into the dark and never returned. A child wouldn't stop screaming, even when her mother held her mouth shut. And then came the death. An old woman, one of the seers of the Thens, collapsed. Her eyes bled black. She muttered strange words, then died without a wound. A few hours later, another man fell. Then another. They had no marks, just fear frozen on their faces. Panic began to spread like a sickness. We can't go on, said Bora Wunai. We have to turn back. To what? Ned snapped. The dead behind us. You want to lead them back into that? The people were tired, starving, afraid, but they still followed. Not because they believed they'd survive, but because Ned Stark hadn't broken yet. And if he could keep walking, so could they. On the 7th day underground, they found the gate, a door of black stone covered in old Valyrian symbols. Burned into it was a single handprint. Human, bloody. Ned stepped forward. He raised his hand, placing it against the mark. The stone grew warm beneath his skin. A deep hum filled the air. The door shook. Then it opened slowly. If it didn't want to. Behind it was sunlight. Real sunlight, blue sky, green trees. A frozen river winding through the valley. They had made it through. People cried. Some fell to their knees. Others just stared. Ned stepped out last, his eyes scanning the horizon. But he felt no joy. The gate had let them pass, but not all of them, and something had come with them. He could feel it. Something old, something watching. He didn't say a word as the people began building fires and shelters. But his hand never left the hilt of ice, because whatever haunted the mountain had followed them out. The valley beyond the mountain was quiet, too quiet. Birds didn't sing. No animals wandered the trees. The wind didn't rustle the branches. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Ned stood at the edge of the encampment, eyes locked on the tree line. He'd sent scouts in all directions, north, east, south, even a few brave ones west, toward the edge of the wall again. Most hadn't returned. The ones who did came back pale, frightened, and whispering the same thing. There's no one left. Villages were burned, castles abandoned, farmhouses collapsed. The north was empty or close to it. No banners flew. No crows cawed. Even Winterfell stood silent on the horizon like a shadow of its former self. The long night was creeping south faster than they had feared. But it wasn't just the absence of people that unsettled Ned. It was the way the land itself felt wrong. Tormund noticed it too. He spat every time he walked past the trees. "They're not normal," he muttered. "They look alive, but they ain't. I cut one. No sap, just dust." Children cried in their sleep. The elders had stopped telling stories. The warriors sharpened blades, not because they were preparing for war, but because they didn't know what else to do. It was the silence that broke people's minds. Then one morning, something happened. Ned woke to a scream. Not a scream of pain or fear, but rage. He rushed toward the sound, sword drawn. A crowd had gathered near the eastern edge of the camp. In the center stood a boy not more than 16, clutching a spear in one hand and pointing at a man lying on the ground. The man was dead. His body twisted in an unnatural way, face frozen in terror, eyes bloodshot and wide. He was talking to something. The boy yelled. I saw it in the woods. He was whispering in some tongue I didn't know. "Lies," hissed Bora One Eye, stepping forward. Boy scared, trying to cover his own guilt. But Ned was already kneeling beside the dead man. His skin was pale, not from the cold, but from something else, like life had been drained out of him. There were no wounds, no blood, just death. "This is the third one," Ned muttered. "No signs of attack, no injuries, just stolen." From the inside, Tormund stepped closer. "This isn't the dead behind the wall. This is something new." That night, Ned kept watch alone. No fire, no sound, just the cold and the stars above. He stared at the tree line, eyes dry from hours of not blinking, and then it appeared, a shape, a mando, not a mantle, thin, moving like smoke. It walked between the trees without sound, eyes glowing faintly. Its head turned toward the camp. It didn't approach, just watched Ned. Stood slowly, quietly. His hand went to ice, but as soon as he moved, it vanished like fog in the morning sun. The next morning, he didn't speak of it. He didn't need to. Others had seen it too. They whispered of the watcher in the trees, a shadow with no footsteps, a face without a mouth, a presence that stared too long and left people feeling empty afterward. And soon the people began to turn on each other. Accusations flew like arrows. "She's been whispering to the trees. He's not the same man who came out of the mountain. They're marked. They brought the curse with them." Ned tried to hold it together. He called for calm. He gave speeches near the fires, reminding them who they were, what they had survived. But fear eats away at the soul faster than cold ever could. Then, one night, a fire broke out in the center of the camp. 3 tents gone, 2 people dead. A child burned trying to escape. No one knew who started it, or maybe they did, and were just too afraid to say. Ned sat alone afterward, staring at the charred remains. He thought of Robb, of how proud he'd been of his son, strong, noble, brave, and how fast war had swallowed him, burned away all that pride, left only ashes behind. He wondered if Jon was still alive, if he'd taken the black, if he still believed in the honor Ned once taught him. But what did honor mean now? He was a king without a crown, ruling over a dying people in cursed woods, while something old and nameless watched from the dark. That night, the dreams returned. Winterfell burning, his children screaming from behind locked doors. The god filled with shadows, all of them whispering the same thing. The old powers do not forget. You walked where no man should. Now you carry the mark. He woke with blood on his hands, not his, and no memory of how it got there. Tormund found him before dawn. You need to hear this, he said, voice hard. They walked to the far edge of the camp where a scout had returned barely alive. His face was blue, his fingers frostbitten, but his eyes were full of terror. There's movement in the ruins, he gasped. South of here, south of Winterfell, whites, Tormund asked. Scout shook his head. Worse, he whispered. Not dead, not alive, something else. Ned looked south, toward Winterfell, toward his old home. Something was calling him back. But this time, it wasn't a king's command or a lord's duty. It was something deeper, older, and far more dangerous. The wind over the broken fields of the north had changed. It no longer howled like a beast. It whispered, low, endless, as if the land itself was murmuring secrets, long buried beneath ice and sorrow. Ned Stark rode alone ahead of the column, his fur cloak trailing behind him, heavy with frost. Behind him, the remnants of the free folk followed in silence. Fewer now. Some had stayed in the valley, unwilling to risk another step. Others had vanished in the night, their tents found empty, no sign of struggle. Just gone. But Ned had made his choice. He would return to Winterfell. Not because it was his home, because it was the only place left that might hold answers. They reached the outskirts. By the 5th day, Winterfell stood like a dead god on the snowy plain, its towers broken, its walls cracked. Smoke curled from one chimney, no more. The castle looked less like a home now, and more like a tomb. Something was still inside it. Ned could feel it in his bones. He dismounted, walking the final stretch on foot. Each step brought memories. He passed the old training yard where Robb once sparred with Jon. He passed the broken weirwood gate that led to the godswood where he had once knelt in silence, listening for the old gods. The courtyard was empty, but not silent. Whispers filled the air, not spoken, not heard with ears, felt as if thoughts not his own brushed against his mind like cold fingers. He returns to where it began. Tormund stepped beside him, axe ready. His face was pale. I don't like this, Ned. The ground's too still. The air feels like a tomb. It is, Ned said quietly. Inside the great hall, the fire still burned. That was the first true horror. The place hadn't been abandoned at all. Someone had kept it warm, but who? They entered slowly, weapons drawn, and there sitting in the Lord's chair was a man. His cloak was black as the void, his face hidden in a deep hood, his hands pale and still. He did not move as they entered, but he spoke. His voice wasn't loud, but it echoed, not off the walls, but in their minds. You have brought the storm, Eddard Stark. Tormund raised his axe, ready to charge, but Ned held a hand out. Wait. The figure slowly stood. His face emerged from the shadows. It was familiar, too familiar, Jon Snow, but twisted, older, colder. His eyes weren't John's, they were black, endless, reflecting no light. His skin was pale, and dark veins ran beneath it like spider webs. Ned stepped back, stunned. "No, that's not. I am what he became," the thing said. "When the wall fell, when the dead marched, when the fire died and the cold consumed all. You're not my son. I am a shadow of him," it said. "The part of him that remained when all else was taken. The part that remembers the truth." Ned raised ice, suddenly unsure if he held a sword or a memory. "What truth? That you were never meant to return," the thing whispered. "That the moment you stepped beyond the wall and walked through that cursed gate, you became the beacon, the guide. You carry something now, a piece of the old dark. It clings to you." Ned's grip tightened on his sword. "You speak in riddles." "I speak in warnings," it hissed. "You opened the way, and they followed. Not the dead, something older. Something that waits between life and death. You brought them here." Ned shook his head. "I saved these people. I led them south, to escape the dead, and in doing so, you led the greater death home." Suddenly, the air grew colder. Frost bloomed along the walls. Ice crept over the stones beneath their feet. From behind them, screams. The free folk had begun to arrive at the gates of Winterfell, and so had something else from the tree line beyond the broken walls. They emerged figures in tattered robes, tall and inhuman. Their faces were empty, their mouths stretched in eternal silence, their arms long and jointless, and in their presence the world bent. Some men dropped their weapons and fell to their knees, weeping without knowing why. Others turned to run, but their legs gave out like their bones forgot how to move. Ned stared at the creature in front of him, the one that wore his son's face. "You called them. I warned you of them," it said. "They've always been here, waiting for the gate to open. You brought the key." Ice burned in his hand. The steel shimmered faintly, as if it too remembered something, as if the blade itself was afraid. Growled low beside him. "What do we do now, Ned?" "We fight," Ned whispered. "You can't fight them," the Not John said. "They are thought, they are hunger, they are memory that refuse to die." "Then I'll be memory too," Ned said, stepping forward, and he swung. The blade of ice cut through the shadow in front of him, and for a heartbeat the world screamed. The walls of Winterfell trembled. The sky cracked with thunder. The shadows reeled, but they did not fall. The Not John smiled with blackened teeth. "You still don't understand, do you? What? This isn't your story anymore." And with that, it vanished like smoke drawn into the air. Ned turned. The shadows were flooding the yard. His people were falling, and Winterfell, the last memory of the man he once was now the battlefield of something far beyond the wars, of kings and lords. This was no longer a fight for the North. It was a fight for the soul of the world. The sky over Winterfell had turned black not with storm, but with something deeper. A living night that pulsed and moved like breath. The sun was gone. The stars blinked out one by one. All around Ned Stark, the world was folding inward like a dying fire. He stood alone now in the godswood, ice in his hand, its steel glowing, faintly blue. The once holy place was silent. The heart tree's red leaves hung limp like soaked paper. Blood trickled from its carved face, but it wasn't sap, was real blood, warm and thick, pooling at its roots. Behind him, the free folk were scattered. Most were dead. Some lost their minds before the shadows even touched them, turning on each other. mumbling in tongues, eyes black as coal. Those who resisted the darkness vanished into thin air, leaving only clothing and steam behind. Tormund had died saving 3 children, holding the gate as the first wave of shadows entered. He laughed even as they tore into him, yelling, "Tell, the night I die on my feet." Ned had buried him with his axe still in hand. Now only Ned remained, but he wasn't untouched. He could feel it inside him, that whispering dark the creature spoke of. Ever since the gate beneath the mountain, a mark, not on his skin, but deeper in his soul. He had brought them here, not through evil, but through desperation, through trying to save his people. Wasn't that always how doom began? A good man, doing the right thing too late. The heart tree spoke now in sound, but in memory. He saw his children again, Robb falling on the battlefield, arrows through his chest, Sansa trapped in a life of masks and knives, Bran staring with eyes not his own, Arya walking away from everything, Jon becoming something else entirely, even little Rickon running and never dodging. Then Catelyn, her voice, her smile, the last kiss, and the blood. He fell to his knees. The memories crushed him. The godswood around him pulsed with power older than the first men, older than language. The tree's roots moved now, growing, twisting, reaching, and from the shadows they came again. The figures, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, the same tall, faceless watchers, their mouths gaped open, though they never spoke. Their fingers were long and sharp, trailing the air like ink in water. Where they walked, snow melted and ice cracked. They stopped at the edge of the godswood, waiting, not attacking, watching Ned rose, tired, frozen, ready. "I know what I am," he said aloud. "I opened the way. You followed." He stepped forward, sword raised. "But this is my home. These are my people, and I will not let you take what little is left." The heart tree whispered louder. A sacrifice must be made. He looked down at ice stained not with blood, but memory. Every life it had taken, every oath it had sealed, every secret it had buried. He knew now the shadows weren't creatures. Not truly. They were the echo of a forgotten war. Leftovers of a pact broken, beings from before time, locked behind the world's bones, waiting for a soul marked enough to call them back. And he had done it, by crossing the gate, by surviving, by trying to lead people where none should have walked. Only one thing could seal it again. Ned walked toward the heart tree, the shadows parting slightly as he moved. They feared nothing, but they respected one thing, old. Magic. Sacrifice, the first blood. He knelt at the tree, and for the first time since the day he left Winterfell, he prayed, not to the Seven, not to the old gods, even, but to the land itself, too. The ice, the wind, the silence, the pain. "I accept it," he whispered. "Let them go. Let this end. Take me." The roots moved fast, like snakes. They wrapped around his legs, his chest, his arms. The bark of the tree split open, revealing a hollow space inside the trunk. Ned did not fight. He let go of ice. It fell to the snow with a dull thud. The sword of House Stark, the end of a name. The tree pulled him in, and with one final breath, he let go. The ground trembled. A thunderclap rang across the valley. Then silence. The sky cleared. The darkness withdrew. The watchers dissolved like ash in the wind, and Winterfell stood alone, again broken, but untouched. The few survivors awoke. Days later, scattered and confused. Some remembered nothing, others remembered too much. But they were alive. They said a man saved them, a man with grey in his beard and a blade, like a slab of winter. But no one ever found his body. Only the heart tree stood changed. Its carved face was no longer weeping blood. It was smiling, a faint, knowing smile, and deep beneath its roots, something slept again, waiting, but this time sealed by a man who chose memory over legacy, who gave up his name to protect strangers who once called him enemy. They remembered him in stories, not as Ned Stark, but as the last king of the free folk, the man who fought the darkness with nothing but honor left and did not return.